Welcome to this week's episode of Eye on the Tigers. I'm Delaney Barrow, joined by Harrison Tarr, and this weekend, volleyball will host LSU, soccer will begin their SEC tournament in Orange Beach, and the Tigers return home to host a football matchup against the Ole Miss Rebels. Let's get into it. First up, we have volleyball. The Tigers will host LSU for a single match on Friday. Last weekend, the Tigers traveled to Athens, Georgia, where they swept the Bulldogs in the first match, but fell to them in the second. Harrison, what were your takeaways last week that the Tigers will need to apply going into the match against the Bayou Bengals?
I think the biggest thing Auburn volleyball needs to focus on right now, and Coach Mark Crouch needs to be drilling into the heads of all of his athletes, is consistency. This has been the most inconsistent up and down team. There have been glimpses of this team looks unbeatable, and then other times where it looks like they're the 2020 team that wound up having to scratch their season because we weren't sure which direction the Tigers were headed. I think they're just developing consistency. It's not as much about, hey, we have to sweep every contest, as much as let's make sure that what we're doing is repeatable every single week. And I'm all for riding momentum and riding streaks, but also it's been up and down, and developing some form of, I guess you're looking for repetitiveness, and that's not always a good thing in sports, but in this case, finding an identity. We're almost at the end of the volleyball season, and we still aren't really sure about the capability, that's the word I'm looking for, of the Auburn volleyball team. So I think that consistency is probably a big thing that you need to take away from literally a polar opposite weekend at UGA.
You mentioned consistency, and I think that ties really closely to just setting the tone early in every single set. I mean, earlier this week, Liz Rich got SEC Offensive Player of the Week, which is great for the team, her first honor of the season. And Rebecca Rath is now 5th for single-season kills within the program. And those are 2 star players. And there's other firehouses on the team, including Tatum Shipes, Val Green, Bella Rosenthal. This team is full of talent, but they just have to develop that consistency, like you said, and they have to set that tone, especially when it comes to leadership on the team, because it has been up and down. It is an improvement from last year, but the Tigers still have a long way to go if they want to build that championship caliber team and just continue to grow the program. And at the beginning of the season, we were talking about how this is kind of a sacrificial year for those seniors. They're playing in uncomfortable positions. They're kind of just doing whatever they need to grow the program, but they're not going to be the ones to see the results. So far, I don't think a ton of progress has been made to make it worthwhile for those seniors in the long run. And so I think this weekend, they just really need to continue to, like you said, build that consistency, set that tone early on, and look at the leaders early in the matches. Next up, we have soccer. The Tigers will travel to Orange Beach to begin the SEC tournament for the 21st consecutive year, the 26th time in program history. Harrison, taking a look back at soccer season, what were your biggest takeaways, and how can they find success this weekend?
Well, there were a couple things we learned this season in Auburn soccer, and we were talking about it before the air, not to reiterate what we just said about volleyball, but it was an up and down roller coaster ride all throughout the duration of the entire season. Defense has been lights out. Scoring has come in bunches or not come at all. So I think that when you look at the 2021 campaign for Karen Hoppe's squad, this was an overall success because you're significantly better than you thought you were going to be. A lot of young talent, very young team, and now you've got the opportunity to have a clean slate. You can go out and beat teams maybe you're not supposed to, and you need to take care of the teams that you're supposed to take care of, because that's something Auburn struggled with this year. So I know it's an overview statement. You may have been looking for something a little more specific. If you want me to put a specific name out there, Emmy Craven's a beast on defense. I don't know if this has been spoken enough, but she is phenomenal. Beyond that, it's an opportunity that the Hoppe and them are presented with at the moment. So got to make sure you win the games you have to win, though. That's a big one.
Yes, definitely winning the games that you have to. And the Tiger team, we've talked about before, they're very successful offensively, especially with just the powerhouses on the team, including Sydney Richards, Marissa Arias, Anna Haddock. But it's almost like they always find a way to win or to get it done enough, whether or not that's ending in a draw. But usually it comes at the last minute, and it has been up and down, and it is almost like they're doing just enough to get where they need to where they'll be okay. But I don't think they've ever been too comfortable in a game this season. And that's a little disappointing, because I know that there were really high expectations going into this, and they did do better than the bare minimum expectations,
right.
But there were a lot of games they should have won, some heartbreakers, especially with those ranked teams where it should have been closer and they just couldn't follow through. And they did make those plays to try to come back, and just like with Ole Miss last week, they ended up ending in a draw, but they could have won and they should have won that. And so it's games like that that really just make you wonder, how will this SEC tournament end? But you mentioned the defense, Emmy Craven, Maddie Prohaska, she's really continued her successful performance from last year. And I think that if the soccer team is able to fire on all cylinders, they will end up with a really successful weekend going into the postseason play.
There's also, this team suffered from this weird phenomenon that happens in sports. It happens a lot in, right now, baseball, we have that World Series going on, and it's very applicable. Teams can get hot at the right time. They can also get hot at the wrong time. And the Auburn Tigers were hot at the wrong time this year. They were very hot at the beginning of the season, and then it feels like everything fizzled out, and they're kind of playing right at expectations now. You want that to go in the other opposite direction? Can Hapa turn this around is the question. Can you make sure you get back to wherever you were at the beginning of the season? This team is significantly better the first 6 games than it has been the rest of the season. So there's a lot of room for error and a lot of room for improvement. So I would echo everything you just said.
Exactly. In usual sports seasons, you want that trend to be an upward trending line, and it hasn't been. And so hopefully this weekend they can bounce back, maybe make that jump back and get hot, hopefully at the right time, because it matters. Everything matters now. It's do or die. So that will start this weekend. Be sure to tune in. Our last Auburn sport of the weekend is football. After a bye week, Auburn will return home to host Ole Miss in a night game. Harrison, what do you hope the Tigers took away from last week's bye week, as well as the one against Arkansas, as they prepare to host the Rebels?
We've got a lot going around in Auburn football right now, Delaney. We were talking about this before we went on the air. A lot of outside distractions that I'm hoping, if you're an Auburn fan, that you're hoping that the team has blocked out, because there's been a lot of outside noise. And on the field, important to get healthy. I mean, that's the point of a bye week. You've got to get healthy over your bye week, and you got to make sure you're not running people too hard in practice, but also not running them too soft to the point where they're not game ready. The biggest thing that I'd want, if you're an Auburn fan, you want for the Tigers to take away from that win in Fayetteville and to build into, is this is the best that receiving corps has looked since well before 2021. I mean, this is significantly better than anything we've seen. There have been very few drops. Demetrius Robertson looks like he actually knows how to catch a football now, so that's new. That's good for the Tigers, and I mean that in the most considerate, not critical way, but also critical. The Tigers need to lock in on defense. Matt Corral is going to rip you to shreds if you do not contain him. And there were a lot of times where, and it's been this way throughout 2021, I'm not sold on the Derek Mason defense yet. You're running man when you don't need to run man, and then you run zone when you should be running man. They've gotten away with some scheming problems and kind of skidded by because no one picked them to beat Penn State or Georgia. But to this point, if you're not tuning up, this week you could get burned pretty bad. But I thought they did pretty well in Fayetteville when they had to. Not necessarily when they wanted to, but when they had to. So that's my takeaway from the bye week. What about you, Delaney?
I think the bye week, definitely you mentioned the health of the players. I think just being able to continue that momentum from the win over Arkansas, because, I mean, that one meant just a little bit more. And so
that was a good bit. That was a really good bit.
Yeah, it did. I mean, after just those two teams always are going to have at it, especially it being in Fayetteville. I think that win did mean a lot momentum-wise for the Tigers. And I know that Brian Harson's press conference this week was talking about how the bye week was not taken for granted. And so I really hope that we're able to see that on the field this weekend. And I think the offense just needs to be focusing on the ground game. They haven't gotten 200 yards rushing since the first 2 games of the season versus Alabama State and Akron. And so I think that they're able to look at that and also give Nix the opportunity to make those spectacular plays, whether or not it's a scramble, and just kind of have him fill in. I think that that's going to be a really good chance where they're going to find their success this weekend. And you mentioned Matt Corral. The Ole Miss offense has been firing very consistently. And on top of that, I think that this is probably going to be a just back and forth game. It's going to be a classic SEC thriller. I think the fact that it's at home is definitely going to help the Tigers, especially night game. That atmosphere is always insane.
Absolutely.
And so you mentioned the defense on Auburn's side. I think that I haven't been too impressed with it either, so the offense is really going to have to step up and fix all those holes because
it shouldn't be a problem because this Ole Miss defense is ranked number 100. They're bad. 100 in the country. They're like that is a fact. They are bad. Mm-hmm. So if Auburn can't score against Ole Miss, you should be worried for the rest of the season.
Exactly. And I mean, Nix has been improving. He did have a good performance against Arkansas. He had 21 completions spread between 10 receivers, which I was very impressed with. And 5 of those went to Shedrick Jackson. And so I think that if they can just continue kind of tying back to what we were saying about setting the tone with volleyball, just early on having those leaders on the field and playing with that consistency, because I mean, this Auburn team, if you're an Auburn fan, you've had heartbreak and heart attacks, and just that consistency, I think they have a really good chance to find success against the Rebels.
I'd agree. It's going to be a dogfight this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
I really think so, and we'll get to the picks later. I know that this is your show, so I don't want to spoil too much, but I think that we've got some key players coming back on both sides both sides of the field, getting healthy again. Auburn's going to have a couple players back that we're going to talk about later on. Remember, circling around Papo being back, which is a huge instant impact for the Tigers. It's a big test. I think if Auburn wins this one, it's SEC West race is not closed.
Yes, I agree. The winner of this, I mean, this is down to the line. They control their destiny in the West.
Yeah.
But you mentioned key players. Who's your player to watch this week?
Going with Owen Papo. I know I just said that. And then the reason is, and this has got an asterisk next to it because we've not been officially told he's going to play. It sounds everyone's hinted in the direction, Colby Wooden hinted in the direction that we're probably going to see Owen Papo playing for the Orange and Blue on Saturday. He's an instant impact maker on the defense. You think you don't realize how much of an impact he has when you look at the stat sheet and maybe he only has a handful of solos and a handful of total tackles, and then you take him off the field and the defense just looks completely different. That's leadership. That's also being able to call audibles by himself because he just reads the game so well, and just an impact of people want to run away from him. You don't want to run the ball toward Owen Papo or throw the ball in his direction because it's not going to be productive for your team. I like Papo. Wild card, 2 sacks on Matt Corral. I know that's crazy, but 2 sacks on Matt Corral on Saturday.
On the offense, I'm going to be looking at Demetrius Robertson. I know you mentioned his inconsistency. That's why I'm looking at him. I'm really hoping that this game he's had some really spectacular plays, struggled to catch some, but the ones he does catch, they look really good, and they are those game-changing plays. And so I think that if he continues to make plays like that, along with just the regular basics, checks all the boxes, catches, and those kind of plays, I think that he's really going to make his mark on this game. But yeah, I'm just really hoping for some consistency from him this weekend.
Wild card, John Samuel Shanker. Wild card. Just to throw that out there. He's Mr. Reliable, right? Mm-hmm. When other receivers aren't catching the ball, John Samuel Shanker does not drop them. I just wanted to throw that one out there for talking offense because him and Nick seem to have a connection. But Nix and Robertson are on the same page now. Mm-hmm. So Auburn fans should be... Don't count the Tigers out this weekend.
Don't count them out.
Don't look at the rankings. Don't count the Tigers out.
Yes, the Tigers are a 3-point favorite, but that game will air on ESPN at 6 p.m. on Saturday. For our final segment, we have our weekly pick'ems. First up is Baylor versus Texas.
Oh, I hate this game. I don't hate this game because, this is going to be an awesome football game. I love when teams within the state of Texas play each other. I actually would like to start a movement to make the All-Texas Conference. I think that would be electric, just me. Every piece of me tells me that I need to take Baylor, but this game's in Austin. And this just feels like a game Texas should win for no reason. And Steve Sarkisian kind of reignites the flame that people are like, okay, he is the answer at Texas after all. I'm going to take the Horns. I don't like it. I don't know what the spread is, and I would not take them to cover anyways. So I'm going with Texas. What about you?
I'm going to have to go with Baylor. I do think this could be a back-and-forth game. It is in Texas. Like you said, those rivalries, just means more there. And on top of that,
it's about to just mean more.
It's about to just mean more. And I think that Texas they just really need this win just to continue making a name for themselves. Yes. Because when they do win the SEC, they are going to be in a competition to not be the last place team.
Yeah.
But I do think that Baylor's going to get this win just because they've been slightly more consistent this season. But I think it will be a close game.
I like that take.
Next up, we have Michigan State.
Another one I just don't feel good about. Michigan State, excuse me, has been absolutely blowing my mind this year. No reason this team should be where they are. I also never trust a Jim Harbaugh team, ever, in any scenario whatsoever. I like Michigan in this game. I don't love Michigan in this game, but I'm going to roll with the Wolverines.
I'm going to go with Michigan State in this one. I feel like between the two teams, I mean, this is always a good game every year. And I just think overall, Spartans have just been playing at a little bit of a higher caliber this year, although I think that this one, honestly, also could go either way. I just think this whole weekend is full of really close matchups.
Toss-ups.
Definitely ones to watch, but I'm going to go with the Spartans on this one.
Good take.
Next up, we have Ohio State versus Penn State.
This is the easiest one on the slate. Buckeyes by 14.
I'm going to go with the Buckeyes as well. They have a very productive offense, a good defense, and this is not the same team that started out. They started a little slow, but they've made great strides. And, I mean, I don't even think that matters because Penn State's offense is just very inconsistent. They've lost struggles. Sean Clifford got kind of beat up against Iowa, and I think that is really going to affect them. So I do think Buckeyes are going to definitively win this one.
And they still have to defend their name in the Big Ten and keep their chances. The playoffs are still wide open, but
right.
Ohio State's definitely going to be the contender out of the Big Ten. We've learned that Penn State's not good, neither is Iowa. Good, but not great. And Ohio State might have just had a fluke loss to Oregon. So, I mean, I think that I feel very good about our picks with Ohio State in this one.
Yes, that is one pick this week I'm very confident in.
Yeah, I feel good about.
Next up, we have Florida versus Georgia.
Okay, so there are two picks I feel really good about this week. Dan Mullen's coaching for his job right now. They don't have a quarterback. If they roll out with Emory Jones, Dan Mullen should be fired at halftime if he starts Emory Jones on Saturday. It should be Anthony Richards. Should not be a question. I still think that Dan Mullen's going to start Emory Jones. It doesn't matter. Georgia's going to not let anybody score on them all year. They've made that painfully obvious. This is probably the best defense of our lifetime that we will have ever seen, and quite possibly one of the best defenses ever. Offense for Georgia is so underwhelming it hurts. But dogs by 25? Not close. Like this year's cocktail party is not going to be fun.
Yes, this one, as much as I hate to say it, the Bulldogs are going to get this win. Florida can't win the turnover game. Their Bulldog defense is just going to shut them down completely. I mean, there's not much more to this matchup besides Georgia's defense will be the storyline once again, just how dominant they are.
And if they beat the brakes off of Florida, Dan Mullen, people are going to be calling for his head on Monday. The rumors will be circling who will be the next head coach of the University of Florida.
Yes, so there's two matches that I'm pretty confident in. But our final matchup of the week is Auburn versus Ole Miss. Harrison, who do you have?
For the first time, I think, maybe ever on Eagle Eye TV, in the year of our Lord 2020-21, I'm going to take the Auburn Tigers to win a football game, which is crazy because I am always the pessimist, and it's nothing against the university. I just did not think this was the year. I called us to be 6-6, called Auburn to be 6-6 before the beginning of the season. I'm still not entirely sold that that's not true, but no, I'm certain it will be at least 7-5. I like the Auburn defense more than I like the Ole Miss defense. I don't love either one of them. I really don't like Ole Miss. Matt Corral could be he's an X factor. If Auburn can even limit his role, Ole Miss is going to score. They're going to score often, and this is going to be probably the most high scoring on both sides of the Harsin era to this point. But if Auburn can establish and commit to the run game, keep the ball out of the hands of Matt Corral, and not let Lane Kiffin get too creative with play calling, and that is a problem. He's a brilliant offensive play caller. Tigers can be fine. This Rebs team is waiting to get exposed, and that this is not something to degrade Ole Miss and the job Lane Kiffin's done, because I think they are light years ahead of schedule. They're not ready to compete in the SEC West, and I'll probably wind up on some Ole Miss hype tape for that saying that, but they're not ready to compete in the SEC West. Auburn controls its destiny, so does Ole Miss. If you want to look at it that way, that's great. Auburn's riding it with more momentum than Ole Miss is.
I'm going to have to go with the Tigers as well on this. We mentioned how unimpressed we were with the Tigers defense, but honestly, I think it's going to come down to that, and I think as long as they have a few key players that just stand out and take that leadership, you mentioned Papo if he's back, but on top of that, I think keys are going to be stopping those long third down conversions. If it's 3rd and 17, the Tigers have got to put a stop to it. And on top of that, fourth down scoring plays, those are going to be key, stopping those, and then also taking advantage of every scoring opportunity because that's been an issue previously in the season. Tigers make it to the red zone, and they just can't capitalize. So if they can continue to do that, I think that they're going to have a really good chance at getting the win this weekend.
And a couple 3-and-outs probably win you the game. honestly. It's going to take is a couple, maybe 3 or 4 3-and-outs. And the Ole Miss defense is not going to generate turnovers. They have 4 picks on the entire season, which is not that crazy considering their opponents hold the ball something to the effect of 60% of the time compared to their 40% of the time in possession. Eventually it happens, right? They're not going to force turnovers. They're not going to stop much offensive progression. You get a couple of turnovers on defense and you force them into 3-and-outs, force them into must-punt situation. Now, 4th and 5, Lane Kiffin's a go. You're going to go. But you force them into must-punt situations, Auburn's okay. And as long as we don't have a repeat of 2019 where the fans leave the stadium at Jordan-Hare. And that's a problem. You cannot let that happen. As long as fans show up and stay for 60, play for 60, stay for 60, they're going to be fine. I like the Tigers. I actually like Tigers to cover. So.
Yes, should be a good matchup this weekend. Both of us think the Tigers are going to do it. Will they? You'll have to watch on Saturday at 6 p.m. to find out. For more news and sports updates, head to our website at eagleeyeauburn.com or our Twitter at EETV_sports. That's all we have for you this week. I'm Delaney Barrow, joined by Harrison Tarr. Have a great weekend and War Eagle.